Hello, everyone. This is Tiffany with the next chapter. With Tiffany, I wanted to come on here real quick and say thank you guys for the encouraging words. I am over the moon grateful for the feedback I've gotten and the guests that I have lined up for the near future. It's just so exciting. I have big plans for this podcast, and I cannot thank you all enough for all of the encouragement that you've given me. So that being said, in order to make this channel grow, of course, I need likes and subscribes and follows. So make sure you give me a like, subscribe, and follow on whatever platform that you actually listen on. And of course, recommend, share. That's just wonderful. And thank you so much. I am so excited about this next guest that I have. She is a local kind of a celebrity, just gonna say it. And the reason why is because she is a self-made woman. Her story is amazing, and this conversation could have went on for hours and hours, and it's hard to whittle it down. So what I had to do is actually split it into two. So this first section is going to be part one, and then after that, I will, of course, move on to part two. Anyway, I just hope you enjoyed as much as I do. We talk about all things mental health and wellness, self-care, and so many other things. There's really no way to put a label on this because the subject matter is everywhere. But it's all absolutely amazing and just can't wait to share it with you. So enjoy this episode, and thank you again so much for all of your support. Okay, guys, I am so excited for our guest today. As you can see, I have the lovely and talented and highly educated and ultra amazing Dr. Becky Wolery with me. Everybody, I'm so stoked that she agreed to do this. And we probably already talked for an hour before we even started this. And I'm like, we got to get on here. I'm just like, I could do this all day. It's so easy to talk to you. But I'd say thank you again, my friend, for doing this. I can't thank you enough. How are you today?
Well, hey, I'm just amazing because I got to talk to you for an hour before we did this. And you're just a joy to be around, and the positive energy is just incredible. So thank you. And thank you for asking me here again. I just think this is such a privilege. And what you're doing with your new station, that's outstanding.
Oh, thank
Another
you.
chapter, right? That's what it's called.
Yep, the next chapter. Yeah.
The next chapter.
Yeah, that just resonated with me. Thank you.
Yeah.
I came up with that name. It's funny because I was actually substitute teaching, and it was, you're sitting there sometimes and the kids are working on stuff and I'm just doodling. I was in Weezer actually at the high school, and I'm doodling, and I was like, okay, I made a list of names, and it came down to two that I really, really liked. And that one just kept resonating with me. And then I came right home, made my logo, and I was like, that's it. So thank you. I appreciate that.
I love it. I love how you came to your inspiration and you followed it.
Thank you. Yes,
That's
I am
awesome.
very excited. So right off the bat, just some people that have followed me through the Mahogany and Willow also know that Jeanette and I interviewed you last year, and it's been around a year, and it was great. It was amazing. And I hate to have you kind of repeat yourself, but I'm going to ask you to repeat yourself and tell my audience about your education. Like, you're a little gal in Payette, Idaho, 1 minute, the next minute, years later, you're Dr. Becky. So kind of give us a timeline here, how you came to that conclusion. Even as a mother and wife, I want to go back to school and get my higher education.
Wow. Has it really been a year? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Time just flies when you're having fun, right?
I know. It is.
And I am
it's crazy.
definitely having fun. I love what I do. That is a really great question. I get asked it every once in a while, but not too often, because we all have our own journey. And I would have never, ever thought or guessed when I was younger that my journey would take me here where I'm at now. I loved physical activity when I was younger. And so of course I lived with my family and my children. So I stayed at home as a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. And then I moved on to, when my child started school, I opened up my own business, teaching dance and gymnastics and cheerleading to hundreds of kids for a decade. And it was just an amazing experience. I say I love every bit of it. And interesting enough, in that course, there's life happening, and I went to counseling, and I fell in love with the counseling process. And I
Mhm.
had always known that I wanted to go to school at some point in my life. I was just waiting for my kids to get older. But when I
Right.
fell in love with counseling, I knew right then and there that that's what I wanted to do. So while I was involved in the gymnastics and dance business, I started my pathway of going to school at Treasure Valley Community College, which was incredible. They had some amazing instructors there. And then I went on to Eastern Oregon, got my bachelor's degree, and went on to NNU, Northwest Nazarene
Mm.
University, to get my master's in social work, and did a couple years of clinical supervision so that I could get my clinical licensure. It just never ends.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't. And then worked in practice just for a couple years after I had my clinical practice. And then I was just driven because I think I just am driven to learn. I
Yeah.
love learning. And I really had some goals that I wanted. And I thought, a doctorate degree would really help me to reach some of my other goals. So I went back to school and achieved a doctorate degree in applied psychology. So
Wow.
total of school years was a lot. I say a lot, 10 years.
Yeah.
Lot. And I was full-time the entire time and going to school and raising a family. So it was quite a challenge. And my family was amazingly patient and supportive of me. And I'm so grateful for them. And, they're still here. So, hey,
Yeah.
that says a lot after all what
Yes.
I put them through going to
Oh,
school.
yeah. So can you remember those times when you were bogged down with homework and you had a deadline and you had a paper to write or whatever the crazy chaos was, and those moments when you had to pack all of your stuff with you? You might go, let's go out of town or whatever. It didn't keep you from living your life and keep your family bogged down. So tell us some of that with your years in schooling, how you managed to balance all of that.
It's really interesting. I made a priority when I went to school that my family was first, right? That was just my number one priority. And there was a point when I took a summer off. My goal was to get through it as quickly as I could. So I was going through summer, and then my son had an accident, had a head trauma injury, and
Oh,
so he ended up being in a coma and then in rehab for a while. And so I just took that summer off and focused on him. And but but other than that, really, I say other than that, I just took my homework with me. We did a lot of camping back then. And so, the kids go to bed, you're doing homework, I might packing my computer around or whatever I need, my books around. And so you just make it work. You just fit it in. But priority, I think, is the key, is making sure that you prioritize, and then you can make it happen. I laugh
right.
because we seem to be an accident-prone family. And there was one point when I was at TVCC and I literally got in a four-wheeling accident myself, and I broke both my arms. And
What?
I know I did. I broke both my
Both
arms
of your arms?
at the
What
same
the
time.
heck?
I
Oh
know.
my gosh. Then what?
I was 2 weeks away from finals, and
Oh my
I,
gosh.
yeah, I was up in the mountains, and my husband's like, "Well, you can't do anything. The doctor said just keep it on ice for a couple days." So I hung out in the camper with two broken arms with ice, and 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 I'm like, you know what? I can study. I got math finals and school finals coming up, so I'm just going to sit here and study. So I had to do finals in the 2 weeks after I broke my two arms. So that
Oh
that
my
was
God.
definitely one of the more challenging times in
I
school.
bet. That I would say so. Gosh, what does a girl do when were you like casted up
I
times
was
two?
cast on my right hand. My main arm was cast, and my other one was a smaller break because I broke two bones, and my other one was just a partial break on this one. And so they just put me in a splint. So I had the ability to manipulate these fingers. so,
Oh
so
my
I had a
gosh.
partial use of my left hand, and I had to learn how to do left hand and take my math final left hand with the
Because
with
you're
the with
right-handed,
the
of
bow.
course, right? Oh, how did it look? Was it like, okay, that's a four, right?
No,
Oh my,
here's the truth. This is where I'm going to be very transparent and honest with you. My math professor said, "I think you write better when you."
no way. Like, okay, that's nice.
It's true. It is true. I'm a lazy writer. People say you're a doctor for a reason because
Oh,
you're
wow.
writing.
Well, you're probably writing more intentional and careful to
Oh, I
try
had
to get
to.
it right with your left hand, right? So
I
that's
did.
probably why. That's so
No,
funny.
it
Oh
is
my
true.
gosh. How crazy. Well,
That
the
was
whole idea behind
nice.
what you're talking about, to be
Mhm.
the best that you can for everyone, still as mom, wife, all of that. And then the student is balance, learning
Oh,
how
yeah.
to prioritize. Absolutely. Balance is the other one, because you don't want your kids to come back years later and go, man, you really screwed me up because all you did was homework and you ignored
Mhm.
me for 10 years. And obviously that didn't happen.
Well, they had to make sacrifices. There's no doubt. There's
Yeah,
times I was busy doing homework and shut yourself in the door and, please don't interrupt me unless it's an emergency. Fortunately, they had somebody else watching them too. But a lot of mine was after, frankly, during the day when they're at school, because I didn't go to school until they were in school,
that's
and
great.
and after hours at nighttime. So that was when I tried to do most of it, but sometimes you're still cramming for tests. But they've been amazingly supportive. I don't remember them ever complaining directly.
Yeah, yeah,
And even my son just the other day, it was just amazing. It was a gift, right, to me when he told me that he was really proud of my accomplishments and recognized that I had to overcome a lot of barriers to do what I was able to do. And to hear
that's
that from
great.
your son, even though they went through it too, and it wasn't as easy for them, but to have that recognition, so powerful.
Oh,
And
that's
yeah, so
beautiful.
appreciative. Yeah.
Yeah, that is
And
really nice.
it was nice. And I just have to say, my daughter was in school at one point, going to school too. And of course, she would say the mom joke. Yeah, mom's in school. I don't know.
Yeah, but you were talking about the hours you kept and how you
Mhm,
tried to make sure that you were not in school when the kids were there and you weren't
mhm.
doing all your stuff, during that time. But then you think, okay, when did you sleep?
I
Right?
know, right? And then you're like, this is what I did all day long, right?
Yeah. Gosh, yeah. And then you're a married woman and you're like, okay,
Mhm,
I got to manage dinner, and then you got to have a husband and wife time, and whether it's he's fast asleep and you're in the same bed and you're actually reading or something, you just think, okay, trying to schedule
mhm.
time for everyone and everything, and have a little bit of a life for yourself, and then the schoolwork, and then cramming for tests, and then taking them successfully. And no, I just you're my hero, girl. I went back to school at 37 and got my associate's degree, the first and only one in my family, in this immediate family, to
That's
get a degree, right? Yeah, it was a great experience. And so I was 37 and I did associates, and it was about 18 months.
awesome.
How old were
Mhm.
you when you started the journey?
Yeah, no, I was right there, mid 30s. Yes, that's
Okay.
where I was. So pretty close, mid to late 30s when
Okay.
I started the journey. So I was
Yeah.
right there with you. Yeah,
Well,
I'm
I
thinking
can
about
tell you from
35, to be honest with you.
okay, that's funny. It's pretty close in age. And did you find that because of your age, because of your
Mhm,
life lessons, because you were who you were at that moment, that you were probably the best student you could possibly be
mhm.
because of where you had been up to that point, the
Oh
discipline
gosh,
of
I think,
motherhood and all of that.
yeah, I think spot on. Best student you
Yeah,
could, and you have to when you only have so much time, and you want to apply yourself and you want to be successful, and frankly, it's causing sometimes a financial burden, right, on the family,
sure.
because it does cost money to go to school. So you've got to make sure you're going to be successful. But so with all of that said, you apply yourself, you organize yourself, you do the best that you can. And I think having that life experience was huge. But going to school at first, I did not really see that and recognize that. I was just more intimidated because it had been so many years, right, since
Yeah,
I've been in school, and I'm with all these young people that are just coming out of school, even though it was a community college.
right.
But yes, I think the life lessons I learned really quick, but the life lessons I learned had already put me ahead of most of my peers in the class, except
Yeah.
for math. There were no life lessons in math for me.
God, we're on the same page there. Oh, Yeah, it's like, "Hey, old lady right here is having a really hard time with these calculations." Yeah, I hear you.
I loved my math lab instructor, and I was there every day after math class. I'm so grateful. And my son tutored me one summer too. It's love it when your kids can teach you, right?
Oh,
It's
that's
great.
great. Gosh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Yeah, I found same as you that because I was a mom, the
Mhm.
discipline of being a parent
Yeah.
and the life lessons up to that point at 37 when I went back, I graduated with a 3.87 GPA and
Woohoo!
I was an overachiever big time because I had a lot to prove. I
Mm,
was for the most part the oldest one in the room pretty much all
mm.
the time. And I took it serious as a heart attack because a lot was riding on it. And I really enjoyed what I got out of it. I made
Yeah.
some lifelong friends out of the experience. And
Mm.
although I'm not using my degree at all and I'm still paying on the damn debt, you can't put a price on the lessons you learned and what it taught you and everything about it at all. So, yeah,
Absolutely. I so greatly value education. And I don't think school is the only way you gain education, but
right.
I do value formal education to the point where I was debating to go back to get my doctorate degree. And at that point, like, I don't really need it for my particular field I was in, but I really had a desire for it to benefit things that some of my ventures that I wanted to take on. And
Yeah.
so, and I had people that like, well, gosh, I'm just too old. Not tell me this, but I would hear them say, oh, I'm just too old. What's the point in going to school, right? At this point, how much would I use it? Da, da, da. People that were a little older. I'm like, to me, it doesn't matter. Time's going to pass by one way or the other. So
Yeah.
let's be productive. Let's learn from this time that we have. And so, yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. So I didn't hesitate to go back to school. It was more a financial issue, and I wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to create any kind of a burden or strain on the family and relationships, right? So I just had to make sure that everybody was good with it, and I'm so glad
Yes.
they supported me in doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially now that you're reaping the rewards of all of that hard work and everybody's sacrifice, including your own. And so it's beautiful to see the what comes after. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
when you're in it at the moment, you're just full speed ahead and you don't really know what it's going to look like after the fact when you finally reach this point. And now, you've got, I mean, tell us a little bit about what you've accomplished since then as
Mm.
far as your yeah, I'll let you go.
I ugh, I love it because you're always spot on.
Oh,
You
thank
have
you.
great insight, reaping the
Thank you.
rewards, and I think that's a multiple layer because we reap the rewards through the you know the connections that we make with people as we go through. We reap the rewards with our ability to help other people, especially in my field. To me, that is such incredible rewarding to see people and help them on their pathway in their
Mhm.
own life. And to me, that's just a huge reward. And to be able to help other individuals in different ways, whether it can be monetary, right? Because now I have the ability to help people that might need help in different ways, even if it's helping my parents, those
Yeah.
types of things. It's just wonderful to be able to have those multi levels. So, but what have I accomplished? Well, and again, trying to reach a lot of people. So I have my own mental health agency. And when we filled up and we had long waiting lines, we opened another office. And again, trying to serve the community, trying to really help people with the struggles that they were going through. I'm just passionate about that. I learned so much for myself. I wanted to be able to share that with other people. So I have three different offices, one in Payette, Ontario, and Nampa, and just those have just grown. And I've shifted from just working with clients, I shouldn't say just, but working with clients to also having an amazing mentorship program. And we have currently 14 different interns, and
Wow.
I can help cultivate them as they go into the field, and it becomes exponential because,
Yeah.
as we know, one person is going to work with hundreds of others. And so that experience is very rewarding
Mm.
too, and to see their own personal growth as they go on their journey through school. It's been extremely rewarding. And then last year, I started a nonprofit organization that is focused on, it's complementary to my business, Insight Counseling, but it does something a little different. It's focused on prevention and education with alcohol and drugs and mental health and crisis prevention. And what I love about it is I'd much rather have prevention than intervention, right? To me, that is the ultimate. Let's prevent wherever we can crisis. Let's prevent mental health disorders, or at least create awareness so people know about it. So that's just been something that's been amazing to see that really starting to get off the ground and the work that's being done there. And then I started the Dear Dr. Becky channel. And that's been just fun. And of course, these all stretch you out of your comfort zone, right? And as you know, what you're doing.
Oh, yeah. You're opening yourself up to all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But yet opportunities, right? You open yourself up to opportunities. It's wonderful. My purpose was to be able to reach those people that may not be the traditional people to go into counseling. Maybe they just need some tools and helpful tips and a venue in which to express themselves. Write in.
Yeah.
People can write in. I like to provide short tips and tools and even visual imagery and meditations. That's been great because I know that they can be powerful help for a lot of people. So those are just some of the directions it's taken me. And now with the YouTube, I'm noticing a lot more requests I have been getting lately from people to come and do presentations. And that's been exciting too. I've had, many, many presentations. I have one on Saturday and I had couple on Monday. So those are definitely taking a lot more time. But again, the presentations are a lot about prevention and education and awareness. And so that feels wonderful to me because if I can help others, help other people or have awareness, then I know I'm doing my job. So I love it. So,
oh, that's wonderful.
So opportunities arise when you start things.
Yes. Well, and it sounds like that you have found your niche with, with the 3 clinics and what you are providing. And then of course your staff and everybody that's on board with you, what they're providing. As you said, it's an exponential thing, but then to be able to kind of diverse off over into the not-for-profit and helping in other ways, mentoring, all of those things you talked about. And I wish more people could get into that mode of the gift of giving, the gift of sharing, the gift of teaching, that energy, because I'm all about energy these days, the energy that...
Well, you know it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Not energy, girl.
I appreciate it because I feel it. I've always been that kid and I never knew what it was. It's because I genuinely want to share what I know and learn from them at the same time. It's a no-brainer. So that being said, what do you and your hubby do to decompress on the backside when you're like, whew, that was great. I just had a great run, got all this momentum going. The energy's great. Okay, let's take a month off. Where do you go?
Right, a month off, yes.
Or 2 weeks.
A little bit.
Okay, a month over a couple years, whatever.
Oh my gosh, you're right. Self-care is so important so that we can give, right? That helps us from not being drained. But I also believe that giving creates another form of energy that comes back to you because it does provide validation and opportunities, and it can be exponential in that. I love the Buddha terms, right? That we recognize that are so true. What we give comes back to us. And I definitely understand that. And it's powerful. But with that, taking a step away from it and just taking care of yourself is a great thing. I advocate for that all the time. And I am definitely a person who loves to travel. And I love to travel, I think, for multiple things. As a social worker, especially, we really talk about cultures and we really try to increase awareness and have discussion on different cultures. And so that because we're going to work with people from different cultures, right? And we're trying to
Right.
reduce things like discrimination and the sad things that happen as we are very well, all these ugly prejudices. And a lot of it comes from social media. And so traveling is just amazing because we get the opportunity to immerse ourselves in cultures a little bit. Depends on how much time we have. And yeah, traveling is definitely my thing. We do other things for fun, but traveling, especially in the wintertime and escaping the cold, I'm all for
Yeah,
that.
exactly. I know.
Yeah.
And if you saw where I live, you'd be like, I am never coming up there in the winter because it's just, yeah. Oh, that's why I've
Mhm.
spent most of my time here this winter
Okay.
because it can definitely affect you. So I could see why you'd want to escape in the winter.
Yeah, yeah. And yes, you're right. Seasonal affective disorder happens a lot more worse in colder, dark climates. So yeah,
Yeah,
there's definitely positive mental health benefits to doing it besides just self-care.
right.
And I do have amazing opportunity. My husband loves to do it too, so that's great. It's a win-win. And
Yes.
we did go on a couple of fun adventures this year. We went to Japan, and we went with a community in Ontario. Ontario is the sister city of Osaka Sayama, and so we went as a group to Osaka Sayama to represent Ontario. And it was a great cultural immersion experience because we stayed in host home. We
Wow.
had the opportunity to do things like visit their schools, which was just an incredible experience. Visit their town hall, meet a lot of people, and then also just see the culture and
Mm,
have an amazing experience. So that was just great. And then we got to host a student from Japan for a couple of weeks, a 16-year-old girl, and she was incredible. And again, making those connections, understanding the differences, and differences can make us great.
hmm.
I love to see the differences. When of course there can be positive or negative differences. It
Sure.
really depends. But I think a lot of it just depends on how you perceive that. I love the school. When my favorite part was all the kids clean the school at the end of the day. They don't have a janitor. They all
That's
clean the
awesome.
school. I
I
know.
I think that's great.
It's just a different culture. There's such a respect for people, and there's such a group mentality instead of an
Mm.
individual mentality like we have here in the United States. Everything is individual. What's best for me is best for my
Oh
country,
yeah.
right? It's the opposite. It's what's best for everyone is good for me, and that
Wow.
changes how you look at so many things and how you interact, what you do. Uh, I have to share one more little thing. So you go
Sure.
to a huge market, right? And there are just bikes everywhere. And there are some e-bikes that are very expensive. And I'm talking a massive market, like thousands and thousands of people there at that time. This is an indoor market with all kinds of different stores and food places. Not a single bike was locked up, even the e-bike.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
Yeah, right.
Wow. What does
Different.
that say about us, right? Seriously, because you don't want to go anywhere without locking up your stuff.
Yeah.
E-bike or a scooter or, anything like that. And how sad is that?
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I've been many countries where, the political systems are just really corrupt and there's all kinds of problems there. And every time I come back and I'm like, I'm so grateful I live in the United
Yeah.
States.
Oh,
So
sure.
grateful.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of pressure, I think, for perfection in Japan too. And so,
Yeah.
there's definitely, like I said, pros and cons. But that's
Absolutely.
what visiting different cultures, it gives you the opportunity to open up your mind and how people perceive things. Because there's so much fear for a lot of people traveling. People are always blown away when I say, yeah, I went to a country by myself and hiked up the top of a rainforest by myself, which I did one time. And that was really fun. And yeah, I went to Israel by myself. I met some people over there, but I went to Israel by myself and just
Wow.
had a wonderful time. And so many people are fearful because of everything they read in the media, right? But when you get over there, I can't say there's ever a time I was afraid in any of my travels that I've ever
Wow.
been on. And I'm not staying in the fancy hotels because I like to stay with the people. I ride that chicken bus, and you know,
You're
I
at the
went to
top, like Beverly
Belize
Hillbillies at the top. Yeah, there's Becky. Oh, look, she's on the chicken crate. That's
on the
awesome.
chicken bus. I've stayed in hospitals a few times and just
Wow.
experiencing it
Well, you
at
immersed
a
yourself
more
because
personal level.
well, when a person goes to these countries like this,
Mhm.
if you stay at the fanciest of the fancy, you will not get the
Mhm.
real hardcore cultural education. You will not. And I think it's awesome that you're like, you know what? I'm just going to stay in a hostel. And just the word itself always freaked me out. Hostel?
No,
What? Yeah,
people
just
don't
that
know what
word.
that is.
It's like it's two different things. Hostel and a hostel.
Yes.
Yeah, they're not really hostile in a hostel, but it's yeah, it's great to be able to walk away
Yeah.
from that experience and say, well, my gosh, I went to these festivals, I was immersed in the
Mhm.
music, I went to these churches, I went to these,
Mhm.
anything. If you go to Europe and like if you go to Ireland or Scotland and you've got to do
Mhm.
the pub walk, you've got to do the, you got to experience all of those things and walk away going, wow,
Right? The
wow.
bagpipes and the Highland games and
Yes.
all of
Yes,
those
and
amazing
Israel
things.
is a
Mhm.
mecca for religion, for all
Mhm.
things religion, and so I would definitely want to immerse myself in that experience, and the spiritual part of it that you would take
Mhm.
home with you, I imagine was just amazing.
Well, I actually went on a religious tour there, so it was definitely all about the religious spirituality part of it. And what a fascinating tour.
Mm.
And I had a Jewish driver and a Muslim bus driver, or Jewish, I said a Jewish guide, I said that backwards, and a Muslim bus driver. And so even just getting the different perspectives, right,
Wow.
was really, really great. But just the places that we went was that you read about. And there I
Mm.
am. And
There you
that's
are.
pretty incredible.
I
And I
bet.
love learning about religions. I am Christian. And so, of course, that meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
But I just love learning about all religions. When I was in Indonesia. I'm trying to think of where I was. In Indonesia, I went to a couple water ceremonies and it was wonderful. I just really enjoyed basically bathing in 7 different fountains and
Oh,
praying with each of them. Of course, I pray to my own God, not necessarily their God, but just having that experience and participating and getting to know more about what it's like for them. And
mm.
you even recognize how many ways you connect on a spiritual level.
Yeah.
Even if you have different some different core beliefs, you still have these amazing connections that way. So it's powerful to
Oh,
see and
wow.
to make it brings people closer together instead of
Oh, yeah.
so feeling like polar opposites sometimes when you hear and read about people in the media. So for sure,
Of
it's
course.
awesome.
Well, because it's
I
all about
encourage it.
divide. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all
Yes.
about divide, and I
Mhm.
think that being able to immerse yourself in other cultures and be open to talking with people that believe something different, because
Mhm.
essentially we're all raised to believe a certain thing, where I'm the kind of person that I seek out. I'm not going
Mhm.
to just go with what the masses say.
Mhm.
I am a seeker of truth. I am a seeker of information. And I
Mhm.
think if we all did that a little bit more and we're open minded to other things, you may end up going from being a a Buddhist to a Muslim. I'm just throwing that out there. Not that that's going to happen,
Sure.
but
Right. Right.
a
Right.
person might connect more with some other type of religion, and because they sought that out on their own instead of,
Mhm.
well, that's how I was raised. Well, but is that what you really
Mhm.
think and feel?
Mhm.
But I think it's wonderful that you kind of just immerse yourself in that, and the experience is something you'll hold for a lifetime. And then, okay, on to the next thing. So where are you guys going next? What's your on your bucket list
Oh,
here?
well, I'm very excited about our next trip because we are going to the UK and actually experiencing a kind of a genealogy trip from, especially for myself, because my family comes from Ireland and Scotland and
Oh, wow.
England. All my ancestors come from that general area. So it's super exciting. So I'm a Sutherland, and there is a Sutherland clan in Scotland, and it's actually a designated piece of land. If you look up clans, you'll find the Sutherland clan. And
Wow.
But also my mother's side of the family is also from that area. Of course, it makes sense, right? They all married each other because you only traveled so far. So,
Right.
right? So
Wow.
both sides of my family are from Scotland and Ireland and England. And it's going to be an amazing opportunity. You mentioned like, cultural experiences like music and plays. And we've stumbled across quite a few in our travels, just out of the nowhere, going down the road, and all of a sudden this parade comes up behind you and they do this big religious ceremony in the middle of the street. And
Wow.
that was quite an experience. And so we planned this trip purposefully to attend some amazing events. There's the Fringe in Scotland that is it's the first or second largest arts events. It's a musical festival, but
Oh,
I say
wow.
arts because they also have different plays and different types of arts, all kinds of things going on. It lasts for an entire month in Scotland.
Wow.
It's massive. And then we also planned it for a musical festival that's going to be in Ireland at the same time that lasts
Oh,
for a week.
man.
So yes,
I'm
so
so
it'll be
jealous.
fun. I get to blend that, cultural events into getting to know the land of my heritage. And yeah,
Exactly. Oh,
pretty
wow.
cool.
I'm so jealous because those two were obviously on my bucket list, for the near future. Well, I say near, it could be 5 years, but it's those two
That's
places.
near.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like different cultures like you do, and I
Mm,
appreciate different music, and I
mm,
appreciate the way different cultures believe in things that are just, generational, and they still do it today. I look at us, I think we're so boring. And I don't, and I'm only saying that because I'm so fascinated by other cultures
sure.
and what they do. And I think I just feel like we have lost so much over the
Mm,
years and have just kind of blended in and
mm.
let things just kind of fall away.
Funny that you say that because we had the same thought, especially hosting a person from Japan, right? And then just experiencing their culture and just the food and everything is
Yeah.
so different. And just the traditions and anime, just, I can go on and
Yeah.
on. There's so many things. But we started realizing, especially after being there and the contrast to Japan to where we live, because in this very rural area, we're like, what do we have to offer people that come here? And suddenly you realize that this is just the most amazing experience for people who live in places like that. I'm sure it's different wherever you're at, but the Japanese people that come here have an incredible cultural experience. And you may not realize that, but everything is so compacted. The population is huge. There are no empty fields. I can travel for miles and not see an empty field, not see animals. It might be clean. I've never seen a dirty car in Japan. Anyway,
Yeah.
but but they come here and they don't shoot guns, right? They're shooting guns and they're riding four-wheelers and they're riding horses and they're
Okay.
living this country
Yeah.
experience. That was incredible. That's an amazing cultural opportunity that people don't have. We have these wide open spaces and these ranges and big houses there's a big joke even in Europe, everything's big in America. And I listened to a group that came from the UK and they're like, the trucks driving down the road, what?
Yeah. And I
Like,
have
what?
one. Big monster trucks. Yeah, it's true. Okay. I guess what I think of is more of the family thing of you go to different countries and families are
Mm,
commune living. They're together
yes,
forever.
many of
And
them. Hmm.
yeah, and the energy that gives off and the longevity that helps to provide for. It's like here everybody, I'm turning 18, I'm out of here.
Independent, right?
Yeah,
More
completely out of
independent minded.
here. Yep, yep.
Hmm.
And then but now it's kind of shifting backwards because kids are a little different these days where they don't want to leave the nest. It's a little different now. And you're like, "Can you please go? You're 27. It's time to fly, or you're
Yes.
37, right? So it's a little different now. But so let's shift into the
Okay.
mental health stuff.
Mm.
Um
don't know much about that, Tiffany.
Yeah, not at all. That's not your life, right? Not at all. I just have to figure out which question I want to ask first because there's so
Mm,
many. So, when it comes to being in the counseling world, what
mm,
would you say is the thing that you have seen people for the most as far as if it, with it's couples
mm.
or singles? Which one have you dealt with more than the other? And out of that one, what issue is the most brought to you that they're experiencing between them or the person by themselves? Does that makes any sense at all?
I followed you. I'm good at
Thank
that.
you. Thank
When
you.
you listen to as many people, no, you did great. You express yourself wonderful.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, so individuals, hands down, we work with very few couples and families.
Okay.
It's just more complex when you work with couples and families. And sometimes people who have couple relationship issues are coming in, but you're only working with one side of the relationship, right? You're working with them and helping them oftentimes with their relationship. But yeah, I would say 80% is all individual.
Okay.
Occasionally families and couples. And so with that, obviously if they're couples, they're working on relationship issues, right?
Yeah.
And if you're speaking specifically about mental health, right? Because relationship issues are a huge part of what we talk about in counseling. They really are, no matter
Yeah.
what it is they're going through. But anxiety and depression, hands down, top two.
Mm,
I can't say one more than the other. It's just hands down, every other person, it's some type of anxiety or depression. And of course, there's a lot of other diagnoses, but those are the most common, no doubt.
so that being said, because that's a great segue into one of the questions I have, with so much anxiety and depression today, and the new wave of the experts figuring out that we're basically being poisoned in a lot of ways with our food and a lot of things that we ingest. And I'm not going to get down that road of anti-vax, pro-vax. It's not
Mm-hmm.
about that. It's about all the things that we are taking in our bodies, from heavy metals to toxic things in our food to pesticides, all of that. In your opinion, and I don't know if this is something that has been studied enough that you might say, oh, I know a lot about that or not, because it's kind of relatively new. In your opinion, do you see any of that as a contributing factor to all of the issues with anxiety and depression?
Well, I don't see how you can ignore it at all, simply because we are biological, psychological human beings, right? Everything is connected, and you can't ignore that. So, and of course, as you've mentioned, there is more and more research showing the different connections with our diet, our physical health, biology, and of course with psychological illnesses that people might be experiencing. So, hands down, that intersection of right diet to medication, mental health, it's and I want to add even sleep hygiene. It's like the four musketeers of what we need to focus on and take care of to help with our overall well-being.
Right.
Absolutely. I think if you ignore any of those, you're not going to have as successful outcomes. And sometimes one of those can help even address the cause and eliminate it altogether.
Right.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm grateful, frankly, that there is more of a combination, especially with certain things. I think you mentioned children, right? And of course, when it comes to children, I mentioned anxiety and ADHD, and nutrition and sleep have a profound effect on adults and children if they're not getting the right nutrition and the sleep. Think about it. If you don't sleep well, you're pretty cranky and miserable, and your mental health is
Absolutely.
affected. Your brain's not
Yes.
in a good place. So that's huge. But even the most common is with children, diagnosis is some type of behavioral disorder, because we see kids acting out. But ADHD, right? Hands down, we hear about ADHD all the time.
Yeah.
And so, for example, if I'm working with child, I really want to look at an individual from a holistic standpoint. And of course, I am not a medical doctor. And so medication is the last place I typically go. Yet I want to know if they're taking any, if it's helped them. We'll do all of the assessments and asking the questions. But when it comes to the actual treatment process, right, once we get all the information and we perhaps maybe diagnose somebody with ADHD, I say perhaps maybe because they may not have it. It might be something else. It could be an underlying biological condition that is not being addressed. When I say that, I can give you some examples later, but so looking at the holistic approach, we want to look at what's impacting them. Frankly, if a person is living at home in a toxic environment, do you think they're going to be able to go to school and focus? And do you think so those things can affect, their attention deficits, for example. So you really want to look at everything, and it's their lifestyle, their diet, their social supports or lack of trauma in their life is going to make it really hard. So some things can present as one thing like ADHD, but it might be trauma or neglect, right? There's just so many things that we don't know. Or it could be, as you said, diet. And so it's important to address that. Better nutrition, regular exercise, sleep hygiene. So I'm working with kids, and the last thing we want to do is go to medication, right?
Yeah.
I prefer healthy approaches wherever I can. And there are so many things you can do from a mental health standpoint to work with ADHD, to help people with distractibility, to help people with hyperactivity, to help them to learn how to organize, right? To help them to learn how to focus. We set up all kinds of plans with children and adults with ADHD to help them learn how to control and manage their brain, frankly.
That's
because
wonderful.
it is a huge problem for a lot of people. But if I'm working with kids, I'm going to say, hey, let's look at nutrition, make sure that they're getting healthy food. And are they exercising? Especially if they've got hyperactivity, they need to be able to release some of that energy, as we know. And are they getting the sleep they need?
Right.
All of those things should be addressed before you ever even think about medication. And then putting them on certain types of programs. We do, IEP programs in the school, and we'll recommend things like fidgets or drawing pads, or the ability to get up and walk around in class and walk down the hall and come back.
Yeah.
Or focusing, like sitting up at the front of the classroom where they don't have the distractions from all the other little kids. There are just so many environmental things that you can do to help kids and adults that struggle with mental health, where you don't have to go to the medication. Medication to me is many times, it is a last resort. We try to do everything before the medication, right?
Good. Yeah.
For a lot of reasons, because even people who do need medication, and there are some diagnoses where, frankly, people aren't going to be able to be stable and maintain any kind of normal functioning without medication with certain diagnoses, especially like psychosis and bipolar disorder is a hard one without medication too. But medication still only does so much. Medication is not going to, when you think about it, most medication is maybe like a mood stabilizer. So a mood stabilizer for depression is not going to change how you think about things. It's not going to change your actions. And so, going to counseling, or even if you take the steps yourself to work on changing your thoughts, if they're negative thoughts, if they're toxic thoughts, if you work on healthy habits, right? Getting out and moving your body, doing hobbies, things that you love, those things are going to make it a win-win. And I know I can.
No. This is beautiful. This is exactly what I was wanting to hear. I love it.
Good.
Yes.
Because it is that intersection of all of these that come together, and starting with what is going to be the healthiest for the individual is definitely what we want to do. I mean, I don't know, you as a mother, who wants to just like, oh, your child has ADHD, go to the doctor, get them on some medication, right? Yeah. No, sometimes there are kids that are going to benefit greatly from it. I have had a couple kids that had such severe ADHD, and I started with them years ago, and I had one come back to me, and it's like, I am so grateful that I was able to get onto ADHD medication, because he couldn't even have relationships. He was
Oh,
so
man.
impulsive. He would lash out, reach out, he was just mean because of his impulsivity. And he
Yeah.
even described his brain as, it won't stop. It just won't stop. And it created so much frustration for him
Yeah.
that the ADHD medication just slowed it down, where he could actually think and be calm and he couldn't have relationships without that
Wow.
medication.
Isn't that sad? That's so
It
sad.
really is. But then there's the flip side, where I just worked with somebody, just 6 months ago, and we simply looked at what the nutrition is, what the exercise routine is, what the sleep routine is, made some changes. The child was doing so much better after that.
Great.
So yeah, and sometimes supplements can be helpful. I'm all about looking at evidence-based supplements that can help particular
Yeah.
diets, right?
No,
So,
that's great.
you can read anything online, frankly, and you can find you can't take this, and you have to have this, and da 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 da. Well, I really like to do a little research and find out what the research shows, that what type of supplement will help most in this particular situation, or what over-the-counter medication that maybe isn't as strong. Like a common thing for children and sleeping is, well, I want to go 10 different, let me back up. Like guanfacine, for example, is something that a lot of times children will take with ADHD, as opposed to a more powerful stimulant like Adderall, right? Or
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
they'll start with something like guanfacine. And so that's really important to recognize, is there's also progressive steps, right? There's a lot of things, like the most common sleep medication that kids take isn't a medication. Do you know what it is? Any guesses?
Melatonin
It
or
is. See, I knew
okay.
you knew that because you're so
Yeah.
smart. Uh,
Or magnesium. Magnesium's a good one too to help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is a supplement that has been shown to be very, very helpful, as magnesium, because it helps both of those. The melatonin regulates the sleep cycle. And it's interesting. It's supposed to just regulate the sleep cycle, but it also helps people fall asleep. I've learned some not so much. But what we recognize with things like magnesium and melatonin is they're naturally occurring in the body, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's not the right amount of it too. And so melatonin is a hormone, not a neurotransmitter. In my field, we work with mental health. Most of the things are about, specifically, the disorders are typically about some kind of an imbalance with a neurotransmitter in the brain, right? And so that's why we have to look at everything. Hormones
Yes.
is one of them. Hormones is a big piece. I work
Yeah.
with women that have, going through menopause, for example, and that can have a huge impact on their emotional regulation, anxiety. A lot of women have increased levels of anxiety. And so simply, instead of you've got anxiety, we're going to start you on some med for anxiety, or you got depression, we're going to start you on some med, SSRI for serotonin, or maybe dopamine or something to help you with your depression. Instead of that, let's look at the underlying root cause. Let's
Yeah.
go and talk to the doctor, look at your hormones, maybe consider hormone replacement therapy, maybe, right? Depends on the situation.
Right.
Because then you're addressing the underlying cause. Whenever you can address the underlying cause, you're going to have the greatest success all the way around.
Right. Right. No, that's awesome. And I'm so glad to hear that, because I think that in your industry, I think there's a big shift going on in a lot of areas because of all of the discoveries so far with nutrition and lack of minerals, vitamins, switching things around. Don't be so quick to just knee jerk react and put everybody on Ritalin. And I just think that for many, many years prior to this new research and movement, that people were just being over medicated. And there's a lot of studies being done about just deficiencies in our bodies that we're missing that can cause all kinds of issues such as, there's not enough melatonin being produced because everybody's always staring at screens. And if you're staring at screens late into the evening, that light is tricking your brain to where it thinks it's still daylight. So you're not producing melatonin, therefore you don't go to sleep, and blah, 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 blah. And plus the addiction to social media. Even little kids are addicted to screens. And it's just like, what is happening? So we're more addicted to all that stuff, and yet our health and well-being is declining. Mental health, physical, emotional well-being, I should say, is taking a hit. So I say kudos to you, my friend, with the fact that you've got the power to dive beneath the surface and not be just so knee-jerk reaction to stamp everybody under this. Oh, ADHD, Ritalin. Oh, bipolar. Boom. This. I mean, to be able to be in this type of industry that you're in and have the passion and the sincere love for your patients to go, I want to sincerely figure this out, the root causes, the deficiencies, the whatever's missing, then we can replace that without it being just a band-aid of a medication, because that's what's been happening for so long prior to this new movement. So I really appreciate your take and your ability to go deeper. And that's what we need, because a lot of our kids are suffering. And I see it. I'm a substitute teacher and I see it all the time. And I just to give you a story about this little gal, I won't say which school because I sub in several different school districts, but fifth grade comes up to me a while back and she has a big knot. She's got an adhesion on her shoulder, right where she's packing a bunch of stress. And she didn't know what it was. She said, I'm really sore. Can I go to the nurse? And I said, well, what's going on? And she goes, I just have a big knot right here. And I've had those because of dealing with issues and stuff in my own personal life. And that's where I set all my stress is right there. So I said, well, let me help you. I know what this is. It's an adhesion. And she goes, it's a what? I go, it's an adhesion. This is where your body's saying, I'm storing all my stress. Are you okay? And she said, well, she listed off a bunch of stuff. My dad has ALS. My parents everything's chaos. Just one thing after another. And my heart sank and I thought, oh, honey, no wonder you're packing all this stuff around. And in my mind, I'm thinking, what could anybody possibly do to help this little girl? Because she's got it on all sides. It's way too much for a child to be packing around. How do you even try to attempt to help them through this? That was emotional turmoil and heartache and stress beyond stress. And the world was sitting on her shoulders. And in that type of a scenario, I mean, what could you possibly do for a child that is packing the world around on their shoulders? And their body's telling them you're in stress mode. But what would you do if you had a child come in that was in that situation?
Gosh, yeah, that's a tough one. And I have to tell you, when I first went down this path into counseling world, well, I'm going to back up just a little bit. When I was in running my gymnastics facility, all of a sudden Ritalin came out, and I would see these kids go from these amazing, vibrant personalities to just like these zombies. And
Zombies.
it really disturbed me. It was really alarming to me. And so going into this world of mental health, it's something I really explored at a deeper level because of that. You mentioned over medicating, and over medicating is a couple different things. One, it's basically a person may need a medication, but maybe they're given too strong of a dose, right? So, and that was really what was happening to a lot of this people that I saw. But also the other part is they really don't need that medication, right? So we're medicating too many people and they don't need it because there's other ways that can be managed for sure. And for a long time, of course, after having the gymnastics dance studio, I kind of came up with a negative thing. I'm like, it's not the kids that need the help, it's the parents. Most of the time, and it's not even necessarily bad parents. When I say bad, I mean parents that are abusive. I want to be very clear on that, right? Because people hard on themselves, and they sometimes think if they're not perfect parents, they're not a good parent. That's not true.
Right.
But I'm really just talking about the ones that are creating trauma with their kids and
Right.
abuse. But what I saw over and over again is really, it was the parents that needed the help, and help, um, that something needed to change in the home. Sometimes it was like what you just said, there's so much stress in the home, or there's so much tension in the home that it can create stress. Or sometimes it's just the lack of tools. Like, we only know what we've been taught. And if I was never taught a good way to discipline or communicate with my child, or how to do positive reinforcement, right? I don't really know how to parent then. And so I really felt like it was the families that needed the help. And so when we work with children, we really try to get the families involved wherever we can.
That's great.
And because if we can change how the family interacts with the child, or help the family provide support for the child, right, then it changes the child much more effectively than just trying to work with the child. But at one point, I finally decided, no, I can't always work with the family, and the parents not always are going to be able to. But even a young child, even a very young child, I can help them. I can help them basically with some simple tools like stress. What are we going to do with somebody who's clearly very stressed? And listening to them and talking to them. Little children will take on the responsibility of things that are not theirs all the time. For whatever reason, they'll take the blame, or they think they're responsible. And so just understanding that, and then helping them see how they're not responsible. Even if we can't always change their environment, we can definitely help them understand things from a different way. And we can give them basic tools like, hey, you can do this. You can help with your breathing. And if the family is, fighting, you can go into the room and you can draw, you can color, or, play with Play-Doh, or do something that releases, or go for walks around your house outside, right? Things that will help them with stress reduction as a very young child. Breathing and exercise are key with stress, right?
Yeah.
And then also getting their mind to shift and focus on something. I've even had kids put headphones in and listen to their favorite music, right? So they're not having to listen to the things that are going on in the house. So there are a lot of things we really can do to help them. It's limiting, though, as a teacher at school, you're not working with them one-on-one, right? So it's a lot different for me. But I also believe in creating awareness. So if I have a child that's going through something, I want the parent to know, I want the school counselor to know, I want the teacher to know.
Yeah.
And I want to give them a couple of different tools or techniques. And usually, if I will say, hey, have you talked to the school counselor? The school counselor, and this happens I'm going to tell you, most commonly when there's been divorce, or when there's been death in the family, right?
Right.
Because we want to give them all that extra support. But like you just said, ALS, that's a horrible, horrible illness. And that family, that child needs support. So if it's possible, I get support for the family too, or look at, hey, sometimes people will bring a child into me and the child is struggling, and I start talking to them, and I'm like, who's supporting you? Who's helping you as a parent, right?
Yep. That's what I was wondering too. And I did send her to the counselor, and she came back. She goes, what did you call that thing? And I said, I called it an adhesion. Okay, I'm going to go back and tell her. I was like, well, it's a stress ball, honey. It's literally just say it's a stress ball. It's your body's way of holding on to stress. Anyway, but I did send her down there. And then, I did, you said breathing. I'm all about breath work. And I did tell her that. I'm telling you, honey, when you feel, because she was like this, and I said, hey, relax, and hold your head down like this, and just take a big deep breath. And it calmed her down for a minute. But I was trying, that minutes of time I had, and then she was glued to me the rest of the day, because I was a source of comfort, and that was everything to me. I thought, oh, this poor baby, you just want to scoop her up and take her to something happy, take her to a happy place, and let's realign. But there's nothing you can do about that situation except that moment where you have them, then you just give them a tool, like breathing, or anything to just make it better for that moment. So yeah, it broke my heart.
Support, Love. And a big thing that I have learned with a lot of people going through things, especially more adults, is they don't think that, that there's going to be an end to it, right?
Right.
And so hope is just so important, and
Oh,
knowing
yeah.
that they do have somewhere they can turn. So I can't promise anybody positive outcomes, right? Because I don't know, I can't read the future, but I
Right.
can say I have seen people go through this before, and it's not easy, but I'm going to be here with you, and we're going to make it through together. And that simple acknowledgement that they're not alone, that there is hope, also normalizing that other people go through this, but we have things that can help. We have tools, we have support. We're going to work through it together. It's just powerful. I've watched adults just like kind of like this tension just melt off of them when they know that. So, you know, reinforcing that they can come and talk,
Yeah.
when they need to. Hey, I'm here for you. And I also think that we need to take the next step, which is, how you doing today?
Yeah.
I'm going to pop in and see just how are you today? Or write a cute little note and leave it on their desk. I'm thinking about you. So I drew this, happy smiley rainbow or whatever.
Yeah. That's nice. Yeah.
A
Yeah.
simple little thing to help them to know that they're not alone, because not everybody will approach, or they'll forget, right? And
Right.
so if we take a moment and approach them, it can be really valuable.
Thank you guys so much for joining me for this awesome episode with Dr. Becky Wolery. And if you're interested in following Dr. Becky, you can find her on YouTube, and I will link that on our YouTube episode of this particular interview. Anyway, guys, thank you so much, and stay tuned for part 2 of my interview with Dr. Becky.